You will notice that I'm in a new space. We got a new background, a little temporary situation. I'm in the middle of moving, so thanks for your patience. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Crue Trime. Crue Trime. Crue Trime. If you are new here, hi. How are you? My name is Sarah, and what I do here is tell you a terrible story to ruin your day and put on my makeup while I do it. So if you're into that sort of thing, then just go ahead and subscribe to this channel right now. Hit the bell notification, and then that will let you know every time I upload a new video. There is a mommy pigeon that is raising two baby pigeons on my balcony here, and Murray is out of his mind about it. So if you hear cat-bird chattering sounds, he's doing it. Just ignore it. So let's get into it. Today's story comes from the Beehive State. Bow down, bitches. Bow down, bitches. Great beehive, but not that kind. This is the home of the Sundance Film Festival and some of the most stunning, beautiful national parks in the United States. Canyonlands, Capitol Reef, Zion, Bryce Canyon, and Arches. Can you believe that this is in the United States? It looks like a freaking different planet. It looks like Tatooine. We're going to Utah, friends. So today's story is quite a popular one and has been recommended many, many times. So if you are one of those people, thank you so much. This story is truly terrible. This is the story of Lori hacking. By the way, I say this every time, I don't really talk about the makeup that I'm using as I'm using it, but if you're interested to see any of the stuff that I'm gonna use on my face today, or anything else of interest, my nail color, you guys always ask, it's down in the description box. Thelma and Geraldo Suarez met in Brazil while doing church mission work, and they later moved to Fullerton, California, where they got married, and they had a baby boy named Paul. Lori K. Suarez was born on December 31st, 1976 to a teen mother who placed her for adoption. The Suarezes were overjoyed to add Lori to their family, and they lovingly called her Filhinha. Filhinha? Sorry if I'm not saying that right. Filhinha is the Portuguese word for angel baby. Unfortunately, by 1988, Thelma and Geraldo divorced. Geraldo stayed in California with Paul so he could finish high school, while Thelma and the then 5th grade aged Lori moved to Orem, Utah, which is about 45 minutes south of Salt Lake City, and the intent was to be closer to the LDS community, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons. They were, pretty devout Mormons, right? And Lori was a happy kid, outgoing, really good student. She was even voted to be the class president at one point. While Lori was attending Orem High School, she met a freckle-faced ginger boy named Mark Hacking. So Mark was from a very large LDS family with 7 children, like one of those giant families where everybody's like super successful. His siblings were Lance, Scott, Chad, Mark, Tiffany, and Sara and Julie. Mark was one of the younger of the group. His mother was a registered nurse, and his father was a pediatrician and quite successful and well respected in the community. So Mark and Lori's teen crush love grew into, true love. They wanted to have a traditional Mormon family when they finished school, and that was the plan. They were definitely working toward that. So Mark was a respectful, generous, kind-hearted young man, just a nice kid. Nice boy. In an interview years later, right, Lori's mother, Thelma, recounted how much she just loved Mark. She said that they would do crossword puzzles together, and he would fix things around the house for her, and he always helped her hang the Christmas lights on her tree at Christmas time. So when he and Lori's relationship continued to progress and get more serious, he even formally asked for Thelma's blessing to get married. Mark treated Lori like a treasure, like she deserved. So on August 7th, 1999, Lori and Mark were married at the Bountiful LDS Temple, which is a big deal. If you're LDS and you get married in the temple, that means you have to have a recommend, and it's a whole thing that I don't really understand, but I know that it's a big deal. So as I mentioned, they were really a model couple. They were active in the church, in the community, they were very hardworking, just very wholesome. Murray is trying to attack the pigeon through the window. Lori was working as a stockbroker's assistant at Wells Fargo, and Mark worked as an orderly at the University Hospital Children's Psychiatric Unit while he was finishing up his undergrad degree. So Mark and Lori were pretty much the same age, but they were off track the college timing because Mark had gone on a mission after high school. Okay, so by the summer of 2004, they were expecting their first child, and they were planning to move to North Carolina so that Mark could attend medical school at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. He had just very recently, by this time, graduated from the University of Utah. So their apartment was all packed and ready to go. You know, Lori had given notice at her job, and they were just days away from starting a new adventure together. It was all very exciting. On the evening of July 18th, 2004, Lori and Mark popped into a convenience store near their apartment in Salt Lake. This would end up being the last time they were seen together. So the next morning on July 19th, 2004, around 10 a.m., Mark called Lori's office. Her colleague, Brandon Hodge, had answered the phone and said that she hadn't made it into work yet, which was strange because her workday started at 7 a.m. and she was never late. And the reason that her workday started so early is it's a bank and they're in Utah, so their time zones, New York Stock Exchange, you know.
I mean, I have graphs. I have some graphs I can show you. If you pay attention to these patterns here, you can see on the graphs. I made these on my computer.
Wow. So earlier that morning, Lori had gotten up, as she often did, to go for an early morning jog. She normally would run at Memory Grove Park, which was near her office. Lori was a pretty avid runner, and she would normally do like a 6-mile loop. So Brandon handed the phone to another colleague, and they told Mark, hang up the phone and call the police immediately, like something is wrong. At around 10:40 a.m., Mark called Lori's mother, Thelma. His tone was very alarmed. He told Thelma that Lori went jogging and never came back. And Thelma, of course, was panicked. I mean, did you call the police? Mark told her yes, but he also said that the police wouldn't do anything because she was an adult and hadn't been missing for 24 hours yet. Okay, now listen, that's a myth. There is no time limit, you guys. If you have a loved one that is missing and you are calling the police for help, don't let anybody talk you out of it. In fact, it's been proven over and over that the first 48 hours are like the most critical when it comes to finding a missing person. There's a TV show about it. Okay, so Thelma immediately jumped in her car and drove to their apartment. And Mark, who had been out looking for Lori, met her there with the police. The bit about this 24-hour waiting missing person thing was either a lie or something that Mark just assumed when he was talking to Thelma, but we'll come back to that. So police gathered photographs of Lori and some of her clothing for the police dogs. Mark was very distraught, crying, of course, and, you know, Thelma comforted him, saying, "Don't worry, we're gonna find her." I need to put on my eyebrows. You know I can't do it and talk at the same time, so BRB. And we're back. So Mark and a lot of other people helped the rescuers search Memory Grove Park and City Creek Canyon for Lori. Lori's car was actually discovered in the parking lot at Memory Grove Park. No signs of struggle or anything strange. The police and the media's response to Lori's disappearance was pretty immediate. So in 2004, this is just a couple years after the Elizabeth Smart case. You remember this? She had been abducted in Salt Lake City like 2 years before, like I said, and was found alive. So they were very hopeful that they would also find Lori. Mark even spoke to news cameras pleading for help for any information that would help bring Lori home safe. Okay, so Thelma, Mark, and some other family members all spoke with police that day. In these kinds of cases, unfortunately, the husband typically is the suspect, and Lori's disappearance began to make the rounds on the news. So when Thelma spoke to the police, she was adamant that Mark could not have had anything to do with this. You know, he loved her, he treated her so well, there's no way he could have done such a thing. They were convinced that Lori, while she was running, must have fallen and, you know, broken her legs or something in the canyon and was just trapped. Now remember, Lori had recently found out that she was expecting a baby. It was so new, the news really hadn't made its way through all of their friends and family just yet. And in fact, Thelma later said in an interview that she didn't know. And it wasn't until they were at Memory Grove Park that Mark revealed to her, "Oh yeah, by the way, she's pregnant." Okay, so they're looking and looking and looking, and they're getting nowhere. They're finding no clues, no nothing. So everyone is distraught. of course. Now, in the wee morning hours of Tuesday, July 20th, the next day, police responded to a disturbance. There was a 28-year-old man wandering the parking lot of the Chase Suite Hotel in Salt Lake. He was acting very strange, yelling, screaming, and he was wearing sandals only, naked. Okay, naked. Naked guy in the parking lot was Mark Hacking.
No, I'm sorry.
Obviously impaired or suffering some kind of mental break, right? He was taken to a psychiatric ward and was hospitalized. Mark's parents, Douglas and Janet, joined him. Mark had no previous history of mental illness or episodes. Bishop from their church ward said that Mark had never sought any kind of counseling from him. I mean, surely it's the unimaginable thought of losing his pregnant wife. It just must have sent him over the edge. I mean, maybe he had taken a bunch of medications. Maybe he was trying to commit suicide. Mark told his family that when Lori had gotten up to go running that morning, she had asked him to come with, but he declined because he had plans to go bicycling with his brother. Mark just must have been like overwhelmed with guilt. You know, had he just gone with her, maybe he could have helped her or just prevented it, you know? So Mark and Lori's family all rallied around him in support, and the community effort continued to try to help find Lori as well. There was over 1,000 volunteers involved in the search. So now the next day, Wednesday the 21st, police were scheduled to hold a press conference to discuss the Lori Hacking disappearance. Right before the press conference, the police pulled Lori's family aside and told them Mark had never been accepted to UNC Chapel Hill. In fact, he'd never even applied. And by the way, he never graduated from University of Utah either. What? What? What are you talking about, right? Like, this is totally stunning. The family's like, what are you talking about? He had made multiple trips out to the East Coast to interview at different medical schools. Lori's mother, Thelma, helped him write his essays in his applications. Their entire life at this moment was literally boxed up and ready to move to North Carolina in like a week. I mean, he had definitely just graduated from University of Utah. He had sent out announcements and everything. I mean, the only reason that he didn't go to his actual graduation ceremony is because he got really sick. Wait a second. All right, so later that afternoon, Thelma went to go visit Mark in the psychiatric unit. He seemed to be in a much better headspace, you know, lucid, not nude, not wandering around and screaming.
And you walked in?
Yeah, he had this blanket kind of around his shoulders, and I just walked around up to him and put my arms around him like that, and I said, "Oh, Mark, didn't you know that my love for you wasn't dependent on your becoming a doctor? Didn't you know that I loved you because of the way you treated Lori and because you were so good to me?"
Mark pulled her close, like by the shoulders, and looked her straight in the face and said, "I had nothing to do with this."
And you know, I desperately wanted to believe him.
I have to say that Thelma Suarez is like an angel person. I mean, here she is, her only daughter, missing, and her son-in-law has suffered a public meltdown. The entire nation is watching. And by the way, they're watching with like squinty eyes. Her first reaction is to comfort Mark. Okay, so Lori is like a super high flyer with a really great job. Mark's brothers are very successful. One's a doctor, one's an electrical engineer. I mean, Mark was just like desperately trying to measure up, right? And now that this deception, this medical school thing and this college thing was revealed, he could finally relax. But now Lori's gone and he's hospitalized and he can't even help look for her. I mean, like I said, the rest of the nation is like, what the fuck is going on? But Mark's family rallied around him and in support, you know, they like stood by him. Lori's father, Araldo, said of Mark, quote, "I love him and I'll stand by him. I think he did what he did because he didn't want to disappoint his father." Well, you know, police didn't stop looking, like once they uncover this college deception. Mark's pattern of deception goes back to when he went on his mission, his LDS mission after high school. So if you're not familiar, a major milestone for a person in the LDS church is a 2-year mission to proselytize, you know, recruit, spread the word. And they serve the community that they're sent to. There's a lot more to that that I'm not going to get into. Feel free to consult the Googles for more information. Anyways, while you're on this mission, there's a lot of very, very specific rules of behavior and standards of worthiness. It's all very closely monitored, and for whatever reason, Mark was sent home early from his mission. Maybe he drank alcohol, maybe he touched a boob, I don't know. The point is, the reason that Mark was sent home early was very closely guarded and protected by his family. And I'm not saying that his family is shady for doing this, I'm just saying they loved him, protected him, just wanted to help. Now, when Mark was away on his mission, he and Lori were still dating at this time. Long distance, of course. And whatever version of the story Mark decided to tell Lori, she believed. Lori was in college, and when Mark returned home, she helped him to get back on track, enroll in school at the University of Utah as well. Mark is sent home in shame from his LDS mission early, but the rest of his family is like picture perfect. His dad is a well-respected pediatrician. His siblings are all very successful. It's a really high bar. That's a lot of pressure, right? Back to Lori missing. So the police, of course, are going full steam ahead. They're searching the apartments, they're searching the cars, everything. And the more they dug into things, the more shitty shit they found. When they were searching the apartment, they found Lori's wedding ring. In some of the coverage that I reviewed, they say that's weird. Like, why would she have taken off her wedding ring to go running? I don't wear rings when I run because my fingers swell up. Like, is that weird? It's not weird. That's not weird. They also found Lori's purse and her car keys. So how could she have left her car keys and purse in her apartment if she took her car to the park to go running? Not super weird, but squinting. So when the police inspected Lori's car, they did discover that the mirrors in the seat wasn't lined up for a driver of her size. Suspicious. When police searched Mark's car, they found a sales receipt timestamped for 10:23 a.m. the day that Lori disappeared. What was the purchase, you ask? A new mattress and bedding. The timestamp of the purchase is like the same time that Mark claims to be searching for Lori. This is bad. The sheets on the bed were so fresh that they still had creases in them from coming out of the packaging. On the headboard... Dang it. On the headboard, police noticed tiny little blood spatters. Inside the nightstand, they found like a hunting-style knife. The knife had some blood and hair and fibers on it. Also, when searching the apartment, they discovered a letter written by Lori. It's presumed by the content of the letter that Lori must have found out and knew about Mark's series of lies, because it said things like, I want to grow old with you, but I can't do it under these circumstances. I can't imagine life with you if things don't change. That doesn't sound good. Marik. Okay, well, this is all very strange because there's never been any indication of stress or turmoil in their marriage at all. I mean, at least nothing that their family and friends even knew about. By all accounts, they were like the perfect couple. Well, we now know that cracks were starting to emerge. Desperate to help find Lori and bewildered by these like troubling revelations about Mark's brothers, Scott and Lance, went to go see him in the hospital and they pressed him for information. By this time, the police had revealed this mountain of evidence that was piling up against Mark. This wasn't really about getting Mark to confess. They knew. Everybody knew. What they needed now was to find Lori. Where is Lori? So they all knew that Mark was the only person who knew where they could find Lori. So they just really appealed to his humanity. They weren't attacking him or anything like that, like they could have. He would have deserved it. But anyways, their strategy worked, and Mark confessed. He said, Lori's dead and I killed her. Remember, Mark is very likely mentally ill and definitely a liar pants on fire. So was this just another tall tale? Hold on to your butts. On Friday, July 16th, 3 days before Lori disappeared, Lori was on a phone call at work around 2 p.m. That was very upsetting for her. According to a colleague at the bank who had overheard the call, Lori was saying things like, but he's already been accepted. This can't be correct. And was so upset that she even went home early that day. We now know that call was with Randy Alston from UNC Chapel Hill, and it was in regard to financial aid for Mark. So Lori had called to see if there was something additional that they could do now that she was pregnant. Maybe they could qualify for a different rate or a different something. Also, later that evening after that phone call, Lori and Mark attended a going away party, and she seemed perfectly fine. In fact, her mood was so different by the time that they were at the party. Colleagues at work that saw her go home crying didn't ask her if things were better because it just was obvious. It just must have been a misunderstanding, and we know now that Mark had talked Lori off of the proverbial cliff, which explains the total switch of mood. There's also another voicemail from that same afternoon from Lori to Miss Alston that said, there was a computer malfunction and everything's been straightened out. Randy Alston later said that she never spoke with Mark. Spoiler alert, she didn't even hear that voicemail from Lori until the following Monday morning when she was already missing. So the bullshit story that Mark had fed to Lori about the financial aid and all that, it worked long enough for them to go to this going away party, but as the weekend went on, it wasn't sitting well. So, of course, we now know that Mark had not been accepted to UNC Chapel Hill, hadn't even applied. He also had not even graduated from the University of Utah. When graduation time came up, he faked being sick, and it was so elaborate and convincing that his dad even wrote him a prescription. He just stayed in bed, and his family threw him like a private graduation party ceremony thing where he even wore his cap and gown and everything. Also, that call that Lori had with the financial aid office was very familiar. There had been an incident a couple years before where Mark's mother had called to, try to pay his tuition, and they couldn't find a student enrolled with his name. Lori confronted Mark about it, and they worked their way through it, and Mark got back on track with school, re-enrolling and all that stuff, and was good to go, or so Lori thought. So Mark didn't just not graduate. He was super elaborate with the lies and covering things up, that he was like pretending to go to classes, buying textbooks. I mean, he just was a straight up liar, and all of the lights were coming on for Lori. So on late Sunday evening, Mark and Lori got into an argument about all the compounding lies. Maybe they had been arguing all day, we don't really know. Lori went to bed, and Mark stayed up and half-heartedly packed some boxes and played some Nintendo. While he was packing, he later said that he came across his .22 caliber rifle, and then he went into the bedroom as Lori slept and shot her in the head at close range. By the way, none of their neighbors reported hearing gunshots or arguing or anything. Well, after Mark shot Lori, he used that hunting knife to cut the pillow top off of the mattress, and then he wrapped up Lori and the bloody linens in trash bags and disposed of her in the dumpster that he knew would be emptied that day. The mattress, Lori's body, and the gun were all dumped in separate dumpsters. And here's the shitty thing. The police had been looking into Mark, right? So they had started gathering surveillance footage from areas that they guessed that Mark would be, seen. His church, his work, their apartment complex. They had found security footage with Mark in it from near his work at the hospital from the morning that Lori disappeared, and the footage shows a person resembling Mark struggling with like a large object, putting it in the dumpster. Well, by the time they made that discovery, the dumpster had already been emptied and taken to the landfill. Also, that mental episode in the parking lot was totally phony, right? So Mark's concocted story of feeling guilty for not going with Lori on her run was absolute bullshit. He'd already killed her. He'd already killed her and was actively covering it up. He needed to make sure that if people started to catch on, squint at him, that he had grounds for an insanity defense. In fact, one of the investigators on the case specifically noted that when Mark was found streaking around in the parking lot, he had his shoes on. And when people are having like a total mental breakdown in a psychotic episode, you don't strip down out of your clothes and then put your shoes back on to run around. So once investigators were certain that the story that Mark told to his brothers lined up with all of their evidence, the families released a statement to call off the search because they knew that she wasn't anywhere else but that landfill. On August 2nd, 2004, 29-year-old Mark Hacking was arrested and charged, later formally charged with the first-degree murder of his wife, Lori. So all of the trash sent to the local landfill, which is about 550 acres, is compacted first. So 5,000 tons of compacted garbage was pulled apart in the search for Lori's body. Human remains detection dogs were also employed in the local landfill to help find her body. You know, these dogs are incredible. We've talked about them a lot. The search for Lori's body was pretty incredible. I mean, the odds of them finding her were like 0.
An African elephant would weigh about 4 to 6 tons. If you have 4,000 tons, then you're looking at 1,000 elephants. So imagine them lined up across the landfill, 4,000 elephants, and now you need to look through that garbage to try to find a clue.
But on October 1st, 2004, Lori Hacking's partial remains were discovered. Lori Hacking was laid to rest on October 9th, 2004 at the Orem City Cemetery in Orem, Utah. Her original grave marker was later replaced to remove the name Hacking from it and instead replaced it with her family's nickname for her angel baby, Felina. This story is just like all too familiar, you know? Like it sounds just like the Lacey Peterson case. Pregnant wife disappears, husband's a big old liar, he ends up being responsible for it. It's just awful. I think I read somewhere that one of the leading causes of death for pregnant women is murdered by their partner. Can you believe that? Is that true? So Mark Hacking did plead guilty to the charges on April 15th, 2005. He was later sentenced to a minimum of 6 years in prison, which I know that sounds ridiculously crazy short, but that's the legal guidance in Utah. Under Utah's system of indeterminate criminal sentences, first-degree murder brings a mandatory 5 years minimum, and since he used a firearm in the commission of the crime, it's an additional year. Release is controlled by Utah's Board of Pardons and Parole, and they have indicated that he will be there for at least 30 years before he's even considered for parole. So Mark Hacking is currently serving his sentence at the Central Utah Correctional Facility, and since being incarcerated, Mark just can't fucking shut the fuck up and keep himself out of trouble. He struck up a friendship with Brian David Mitchell, who is the disgusting monster who kidnapped Elizabeth Smart. You'll remember? We know this because Mark was writing letters and bragging about it. He also got involved in some kind of scheme selling his autographs and like items from prison to murderauction.com. People collecting murder memorabilia is weird, but people say this is weird, so okay, whatever. So in her honor, Lori's family established the Lori K. Suarez Hacking Memorial Scholarship Fund at the University of Utah's Business School, where Lori attended. The scholarship aids women that are in disadvantaged, complicated situations for their education and has helped many, many people. And that, friends, is the story of Lori Hacking. If you are interested in any of the makeup that I used in today's video, just check down in the description box. It's all listed for you. Also down there are some fun coupon codes. Also the links to my merch shop and my merch collaboration with Murder Apparel. Also new, if you have a Crue Trime story that you would like to recommend, I have created a Google form that you can complete and I can collect all the information from you. So just click the link that's also down in the description box. Everything's down there. Thank you so much for hanging out today and for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more videos like this one, then consider subscribing to this channel before you leave today. I upload new videos here every week, and you can follow me on all the other socials. That's it for now. I will catch you next time in the next video. Bye! Family established. Oh, how long has that been recording? That's fun. Nope. Felina. Oh no! Turmoil. I have no idea what's going on. Correctional center. Oh, I hope this sounds okay and looks okay. I'm doing my best.